get this meeting going. Okay, welcome everyone to this 8 a.m. meeting. So roll call, all the board members are present. It's instantly official. Dr. Webb, do we have any communication? Do we have any communication from the non-existent public?
We do not.
Okay. Any written?
No written correspondence the board has not already seen.
All right. I need a motion for consent. May I get one?
To move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion on consent? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Dr. Webb, reg business.
First item of regular business is a recommendation to approve purchase agreement number 2017018 iPad carts in support of Vancouver School District's Design 2 strategic priorities to expand a one-to-one student computing model, providing anytime, anywhere access to online content and digital tools. The district is recommending purchase of 175 iPad carts. These carts will be used in classrooms to store and charge the iPads being issued to all third and fourth graders as a continuation of the technology levy-funded phased one-to-one technology deployment. The fund source is a general fund levy. Recommendation is that the board of directors approve the purchase of 175 iPad carts in the amount of $122,400 plus applicable Washington State sales tax to meet the one-to-one computing needs for the district staff and students.
Great, may I get a motion for this recommendation?
I move to approve.
All right,
Second.
second, any discussion on iPad? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Webb?
Next item of regular business is a recommendation to approve contract number 2017023 IBM for Watson Education Services. The Design 2 Chapter 2 initiatives speak to exploring and piloting emerging technologies and innovations to improve student learning and to provide digital content and services to personalize student learning experiences. IBM Watson Education Solutions is an emerging systems platform leveraging AI and artificial intelligences to provide data, resources, and one easy-to-use location that will support teachers' work in personalizing learning through adaptive software. The fund source is the general fund, technology levy. Its recommendation that the board of directors approve payment to the IBM for Watson Classroom Edition software and coordination in an amount of $75,000 for the 2016-17 fiscal year, $20,000 for the 2017-18 fiscal year, and $20,000 for the 2018-19 fiscal year, and authorize the superintendent to execute the contract document.
May I get a motion for this? Move for approval?
Second.
Second, great. I'm interested in this artificial intelligence educational enhancement. This is exciting stuff. This is great. I need some intelligence.
Even if it's artificial?
Artificial's good with me. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Webb.
The next item of regular business is a recommendation to award bid number 2017017 for the Gaiser Middle School roof repair. On June 21st, 2017, 2 bids were received and opened for the roof repair project at Gaiser Middle School. The project includes the necessary requirements, material, and labor for the repair of the existing roof on one of the classroom pods. 2 bids were received for the project. Rooftoppers Inc., Vancouver, Washington, submitted the lowest qualified bid. The bid includes a base bid price plus 3 unit prices to replace water-damaged roof sheathing and/or insulation as necessary. The fund source is the Capital Projects Fund. It's a recommendation that the District Board of Directors award bid number 2017-017 to Rooftoppers Inc., Vancouver, Washington, 98665 for the Gaiser Middle School roof repair project in the base bid amount of $97,243 plus unit price number 1 for $5 a square foot, unit price number 2 for $5 a square foot, and unit price number 3 for $3.75 square foot, plus Washington State sales tax, and authorize the president and secretary to execute the appropriate contract documents.
Great. Can I get a motion to improve Gaiser Middle School roof? Okay.
I'll second that.
Second it. Any discussion?
No, I just wanted to point out that these last two items are coming from the bond that was approved by our community, so we're getting started right away on making the necessary improvements, and I know the board and everyone in the room is grateful for our community support. It's great to be able to spend the money right away on needed projects and repairs.
And I appreciate Todd explaining to me why there's differences in square footage on those unit prices, and now I have a better understanding of how they did that, so. Good information.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Dr. Webb.
The next item of regular business is a recommendation to award bid number 2017-007 for Fort Vancouver High School Canopy repairs. On June 28, 2017, one bid was received and opened to replace a portion of Fort Vancouver High School roof. The bid was submitted by Pacific Tech Construction, Inc., Kelso, Washington, in the base bid amount of $250,966. The project includes the repair of water-damaged roof canopy trusses, replacement of plywood sheathing, and a new roof surface. District staff and the project consultant have reviewed the bid proposal and determined that it is a responsive bid and the contractor is qualified to perform the work. The fund source is the Capital Projects Fund. It's a recommendation that the District Board of Directors award bid number 2017-007 to Pacific Tech Construction, Inc., Kelso, Washington, for roof repairs to Fort Vancouver High School in the base bid amount of $250,966 plus Washington State sales tax, and authorize the president and secretary to execute the appropriate contract documents.
May I get a motion for repairing Fort Vancouver's roof?
Move for approval.
Second?
Second. Any discussion on this roof repair? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Dr. Webb, Superintendent's report.
Got a board nominating committee report first.
No.
You want to do that last?
No, that's right. I'll do that. We can do that.
It's your meeting, I can flex.
Yeah, no. I was just getting all excited.
Okay.
You know. Okay, nominating committee, do we have recommended officers for next year?
Sure.
Kathy?
Perhaps the shortest nominating committee meeting in the history of Vancouver schools. Kathy and I are pleased to nominate Michelle Giovanazzi as president and Rosemary Pryor as vice president for the 2017-18 school year.
Excellent.
Second?
Yeah, I was going to say, can I get a motion? Second, all right. I guess we've got that.
Move to accept the nominating committee's report.
Okay, second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Whew, I get to relax now. That's good.
Now you know.
No, I don't. Okay. Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And thanks for your service this year.
Yes, that's what little I do. Happy to help. Okay, I guess I should say, why we're having this foul meeting this time of day is really my fault, since I'm leaving town later today, and we wanted the full board here whenever possible for tomorrow. I won't be here, so I apologize for this awful early morning meeting, and thank you for everybody accommodating.
I think we look pretty good.
I did.
And I was kind of thinking, I'm all peppy, so it might be better.
Might be better, huh?
And I got to start later than usual, so.
Okay. There will be no motion for that proposal, since I'm barely awake. Okay, Dr. Webb, do you have, I guess you have the budget things.
Well, in addition to accommodating board directors' schedules, the fact that we're holding a special meeting of the board really is a function of the late release of the biennial consensus budget and the pressure put on districts, including Vancouver, to respond, to pivot with time constraints. So, as you know, the state released details of the consensus budget on June 30th, avoiding a state government shutdown. Part of the biennial consensus budget was a compromise McCleary basic ed funding package. And as I said already, the timing of the release and the complexity of the budget deal has put enormous pressure and stressors on school districts across the state at a time when districts are understaffed due to the summer holiday, as we attempt in very limited timeframes to understand what the implications are for this next fiscal year and beyond. I want to acknowledge and thank Brett and team for their quick work. Today, we're presenting a final set of budget recommendations for the board to consider. Absent any additional direction, we'll operationalize this budget for board consideration at our first board meeting in August after the public hearing. I want to lead with this. Because of sound, prudent, strategic, multi-year fiscal planning, our recommendations enable Vancouver Public Schools to address a budget shortfall next year, utilizing one-time ending fund balance reserves to bridge the district until we begin receiving McCleary compensation funding. Unfortunately, many districts will not be able to use this type of temporary solution. Districts had anticipated some McCleary compensation funding in this coming fiscal year. That did not materialize until the second year of the biennial budget. By spending down our reserves by approximately $2.8 million, or 1%, it will enable the district to continue to provide full programs and services to our students and honor collective. Brett, you're up.
Acknowledge a couple people that have worked tirelessly over the last couple weeks. Dr. Webb was nice enough to recognize myself, but I don't do this work alone by any stretch. So Amy Karcher, Jennifer Jacobson, and Carol Gray, and particularly in my office, have been working, like I said, tirelessly long hours. But that wasn't matched by even, or they couldn't match even in HR department. Heidi Schultz pulled an all-nighter one night last week to get all the salary exhibits updated and loaded into our budget files. So I'm certainly too old to do that. So I'm very grateful for
No, you're not.
So that being said, we still don't have all of the pieces. We were able to get all the salary information and benefit information from the state budget integrated, which is a large share of our expense. There's still some minor adjustments on revenue that we won't know until we get the final, what they call the F203 from the state. That's promised, quote unquote, early this week, and so we'll be able to tie things up a little bit tighter by the end of this week. But we do know most of the large pieces and have brought them into focus. Before we start looking at the numbers, we'll just talk a little bit about the policy highlights. Some of these things you've seen in kind of speculative form in an earlier budget presentation. The legislature did follow through on the original McCleary plan, which entailed pulling class sizes in all kindergarten through third grade classes down to 17 for funding purposes. As Dr. Webb mentioned, they failed to step up and take on one of the most significant pieces of the remaining McCleary issue, which was the state compensation disparity between the reality and state funding factors, which is, as we know, is made up for with local levies. However, they did fund a 2.3% COLA. The only non-compensation or staffing enhancements in the basic ed formula were really MSOC inflationary increases of 1.7, which approximates to about 1.7% for inflationary pressure. As we talked about earlier in the spring, they did remove the levy cliff from consideration by extending kind of the current levy and levy equalization drivers and factors through the 2018 calendar year. It'll be 2019 in which we enter kind of the new world order of levies as it relates to McCleary's. So that bridge, engrossed Senate Bill 5023, did provide the necessary bridge to where they finally will bring us as a result of the long-term McCleary policies. And as we talked about, we are forecasting a slight dip in enrollment, which is not unexpected based on our long-term demographic studies. That's largely offset with staffing adjustments that we pass through our budget process. And then lastly, we weren't able to speculate on this early, but the state did provide immediate increases in funding for our LAP, bilingual and highly capable programs. So those are great necessary services for our kids. Unfortunately, they don't necessarily free up any levy dollars that broader McCleary policy adjustments would have. So we'll pass through those dollars. And again, it's a good thing for kids, but not necessarily a relief to our bottom line projections. So looking at some of the quantifications of the policies, again, some of these figures you've seen before in previous presentations. The kindergarten through third grade class size funding will deliver about $3.8 million. And when we come to the next slide, remember that 3.8, and you kind of get the crux of what the McCleary pressure is all about. Our expenditures are going to be much higher than that to actually deliver on those class sizes. The MSOC that I mentioned is about $500,000, and then we get into our categorical funding, which again is great opportunities for us to increase services, but not necessarily great relief in the broad dynamics of managing our expenses and revenues. So LAP you can see is 1.3, bilingual almost 1.2, highly capable a little over $250,000, and then our local levy collections, because we bump it up every year, will draw about $1 million more, and then we're forecasting levy equalization to be around $325,000. So the total big ticket revenue enhancements is about $8.4 million. Moving on to the expenditures, remember our kindergarten through third grade class size funding was $3.8 million. To deliver on that cost the district about $4.3. So local levy dollars are required to implement those adjustments. Compensation adjustments per contract and various market studies in the board's interest to compensate employees in a fair and competitive way will cost the district about $3.7 million. Inflationary pressures on our just recurring MSOC expenses within basic ed are about $675. And then you can see the pass-through expenditures relating to LAP, bilingual, and highly capable, all totaling up to about $11,250,000, which, as we've talked about, is going to present a challenge to the district, which we're lucky enough to be able to meet with one-time reliance on our fund balance to cover this disparity without having to reduce programs and cut services to kids. So as Dr. Webb mentioned, long-term financial management that preceded me and the board and previous administrators in this area have done a wonderful job of taking that long-term view and showing restraint and wisdom in managing these resources, because this is the classic example of why we want to have those resources to be able to bridge and provide stability in a time in which other districts, as Dr. Webb mentioned, are going to create instability when we should be celebrating a long-term clarity solution. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain questions.
So I just want to be clear, Brett, so that $2.8 million will be restored or be added by the state a year from now?
Yes, all indications are that we will get that and then some more beyond that to...
So no more dipping into the reserve for that purpose. This is a one-time shot for a one-year extension, and it goes away after 1 year.
Absolutely, that is...
Yeah, as you recall, we had expected compensation adjustments for the McCleary revenue in the first year of the biennial budget. That did not materialize. It materializes in year 2. So this is really a one-time bridge solution to the McCleary funding solution.
Right, but I mean, we know that in their short session next year, they could do something.
They could do something.
They could do something, but according to the 4-year plan that they made, it would be restored. So I have, for the class size funding, when you say we got revenue enhancements of 3.8 and our expenses are 4.3, so the difference between those two is, the difference is what we're responsible for?
Correct.
And what is that made up of? Is that buildings or rooms or?
It is basically is what we would assign the lion's share of that to, which the state funds the base salary only for those positions.
Oh, okay, so it is cost of hiring certificated staff.
Correct.
To fill those classrooms.
Yep.
It's not the expense of building rooms
Nope.
to accommodate the smaller. Okay.
Nope, that is completely outside of this analysis, actually.
Okay. When you said they increased funding in lab, bilingual, and highly capable, and they said it needs to go in those things, did they further specify what types of activities you had to spend it on? Or did the districts have flexibility to apply the extra funding to, let's say, highly capable in the way that they would feel is most effective for their students?
So there's standing criteria as to how each one of those categorical funds can be spent. Each one of those categorical funds can be spent, and so we must comply with the existing rules, basically, as to how we can spend those dollars.
So we have flexibility within the rules
Okay.
in order to execute
Okay.
the expense activity, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess I just wanted to make it clear for the record that, what is it? Has it been 9 years? It's been 8 years since the 2009 McCleary court case, 5 years since the 2012 Supreme Court case, and this year we're not fully funded. I mean, you acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
They're not fully funding. Even at the end of this 4-year plan, it's not fully funding education based on 2261, 2276, is that correct? About $14,000 a student back in those old dollars. And we're not going to be there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I just think it's important for the taxpayers to understand that because the legislature, like for example, gave this COLA, how many certificated positions do we pay out of the levy so that taxpayers are picking up that COLA that the legislature passed down, but since they don't pay all the salaries, it's an additional burden on the levy. So how much is that?
Just in our certificated staff, it year to year fluctuates a little bit, but it's usually around 125 positions just within our certificated staff. With classified, it's a little bit messy because there's the FTE difference between what's funded, but then there's the actual salary, because there's not a statewide schedule for all of our classified positions. So there's kind of a double whammy, if you will, on the COLAs for our classified. The part above the state funding salary, we have to make up for all of our employees, and then the unfunded employees, we have to make that up entirely.
Yeah, I just think, Vancouver tells the truth so that when we read in the newspapers or we hear our legislators telling us of the great good work they've done fully funding education, it's actually not true. They haven't fully funded the expenses of basic education, and our taxpayers should know that the requirement to dip into our ending fund balance, which we've responsibly established, is solely because the legislature failed to do the job that's required by the state constitution. So now our local taxpayers will make up the difference yet again.
It's true. The classes would be a a little on the overblown side, about 100, 125 teachers. So it would be a mess out there class size wise if we, the local taxpayers, weren't there to help.
Absolutely.
Well, I do want to thank and acknowledge your staff and everybody for doing everything. Everyone did their part in the process. So some people had a heavier load to carry, and some people maybe had a lighter load to carry. But, you know, being kind of at the end of the food chain, the district always has to wait to respond and then do our very best to deliver all the services. And we're not complaining. We're simply acknowledging that this year it was tougher than most, because it came so very late. So thanks to everyone who worked and did the job that they needed to do.
I'll pass that along.
Yeah, I would encourage that. I think, I mean, this is obviously, I mean, a staff member working all night says it all. I mean, it's just kind of above and beyond, but it's sometimes what it's required to do to get the system to function reasonably consistently, and it's quite a burden to be put on staff. Again, about this fully funded thing, clearly there's some messes going on in Olympia that come down to us to sort out. And anyway, thank you, staff, for sorting it out. Thank you, staff.
So do we have a budget that we need to approve? We haven't approved the budget, correct?
No, that'll come to you first board meeting in August.
Oh, okay.
We'll do the public hearing
Okay,
after we present,
okay.
and then we'll have a recommendation the board will.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Brett.
Comments from the board?
Well,
Go ahead.
it's really frustrating because the legislature has a duty when they are elected to uphold our Constitution, which says it's our paramount duty to fund. That's what we're doing. I don't think they have the reality check that they need. I don't think they understand that school districts cannot wait on the pleasure of our legislators. And so it always puts us, all districts, not just Vancouver, but 295 school districts in the state. Some of them are very small, who depend on the state to do what they're supposed to do. And so sometimes I wonder when I talk to them, I wish they would have an idea of what happens when they don't act in a responsible manner. And when I talk to them, I don't think they have that reality. They just don't understand how many lives they're affecting by their maybe inaction. And so I don't know how we can get that message to them any clearer, but I think it's an important message that we as school board directors have to take upon ourselves. Maybe we need to be more vocal than just having our superintendent and all the people that work with us. That maybe we have to take more of a lead. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what we should be doing, but we need to do more, obviously, to educate them and make them listen.
And I agree. The frustration to me is over the last 40, 50 years, the state has taken the money from public education, the paramount duty of the state, and pushed it into other areas. And those other areas should be reduced accordingly when it should never have been spent there, or should have been raised appropriately for those. I'm not saying they shouldn't spend it, I'm saying they need to fund it differently. And it's very frustrating, the sort of mismanagement of the state legislature and this, public resource, public education, by pushing the money to other places. No matter how well intended, it should come back and fund what it was intended in the beginning. So it's just frustrating to me.
Yeah, I just want to say I think it's really important to note that I think it was right around when I first joined the board 8 years ago that the district made the first contribution to the network for excellence for Washington schools. And, it was a fair amount of money, but this network that represents the McCleary family, asked us to donate with other districts, and we did so. We did so again several years later. Our superintendent is president this year and always been very active with the Washington Association of School Administrators. The board, I think, is fairly active in advocating, and so I think we're doing good work. I just think, I was talking with Brett earlier, the higher you get on the food chain, the less the rules apply to you. I think it's a parallel universe. It's an echo chamber where they sit and tell each other good job, and they all believe it. So it's our job to inform our voters our stakeholders, so at least they understand the reality of the situation. And if, I think Seattle Public Schools is facing a deficit of something like $43 million this year, in a year when public education was fully funded. So there's clearly some problems with the word choice there. But unfortunately, our governor is saying these words. So, yeah.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
I agree. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to, anything from you?
No, that's it.
All right, we're going to recess to an executive session on the performance of a public employee for about an hour, and no action to follow. All right.